In this tutorial, you'll learn how to make low-res textures using GIMP, a free image editing software. You'll learn tricks to make tileable textures that include depth, shadow, and detail. And if you stick to the end, you'll learn how to import them into Unity, format the textures to work with Unity's stirring system, and some tips for Unity's stirring system so you can start building low poly environments for your video game. That being said, let's get into it. In GIMP, we're going to start by going to File, New, and we're going to create a new texture with width 64 and height 64. We're going to press OK, Control, and then scroll up to zoom in, middle click to move around. We're going to get our bucket fill tool, and we're going to pick a color for our grass texture. I'm going to go with like a dark green. That's okay with me. I'm going to click here on our white square. That's going to change our background to be green. And then from here, I wouldn't worry about making new layers because our filters are going to make them for us. So the first filter we're going to go with is Filter Decor Fog. I'm going to name this layer Grass. Don't worry about the color. It's going to be turned to white in a second. And turbulence, I'm going to leave at 1, opacity 100. That's fine. Click OK. And this is what our fog generator does. It creates this like random pattern of, what you'd expect. Fog. But this is it doesn't end here. The next thing to do is go to filters, distort and emboss, and at this point your grass layer should still be selected. So with this new emboss window here, I like to set the azimuth to be about 115 to 130, kind of get the sunlight coming from the top left of the square. That's important to keep that angle consistent with the rest of the textures that we make in the future, so that they all kind of look like the sunlight is coming from the same direction. Well, I like to elevate the dark, so I'll go with values like this. Elevation 55, depth 19. It's up to you how you want it to look. I also like to change the clipping from adjust to clip. That just makes it so you don't get so much extra pixels around the border here. I'm gonna hit OK, and then if you look kind of here close to the texture, the emboss creates these kind of like square borders along the edge of our texture here. We're gonna get rid of that because it's just really unnatural. So how we do that? There's a few ways. You can do Shift S to grab the scale tool, or if you click and hold this tool here, the scale tool, click and hold and you'll have access to all these different sort of transform tools here, but we're just going to use scale for this tutorial. We're going to hold Control and click on the corner box here. We're going to move it out just until that square border is gone from our texture. We want to get rid of that square artifact. From here, you can press Enter or hit Scale. And now that what that's done is that's extended the layer outside of our image size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click our grass layer and hit layer to image size, and that'll cut off all the extra. It did blurry our texture a little bit, but for what we're trying to emulate, this is fine. Maybe it adds to it too, probably. I'm going to do a few more things to this texture. I'm going to go Filter, Map, and Tile Seamless. I'm gonna hit OK, everything's fine. And from here, this is sort of where the magic happens. Now you have this tiling texture that can work with Unity's terrain, and you'll see how it looks in a second in the engine. But that's it for this one. I'm gonna go File, Save, and then feel free to save this wherever you want. I've already made a folder here called XCFs, and I actually already have some previous ones, but I'm gonna go ahead and save this one as grass, and I'm just gonna overwrite the last one I was working on because it took me a while to get this tutorial done. I'm going to go File, New, same dimensions, hit OK, Control mouse up or down to scroll out, Control mouse up to zoom in, middle click to move around. I'm going to pick another color here just by clicking on this box. I'm going to pick another color. I'm going to go for a sort of like a light brown, maybe light orange for our dirt color. I think this is okay. Yeah, this is okay. With the bucket fill tool, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to change our background color to this brownish color. And then we're going to go to Filters, Decor, Fog. The color won't matter because it's going to be overridden. We're going to name this layer Dirt. Turbulence 1.0 is okay. I'm going to hit OK. It doesn't look like much right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Filter, Distort, Emboss. And sort of similar to the last step, we're going to set the azimuth to be about 130 just to match up with the grass texture. And this time I'm just going to make sure to leave it a little more chunky. I'm going to kind of keep the lighter parts actually. And I'm going to set the clipping to clip one more time, hit OK. I'm going to scale our texture one more time. I'm going to hold control, move our corner box out a little bit until that border's gone, hit enter. Right click our layer, layer to image size, filters, map, tile seamless, hit OK. Sometimes mapping tile seamless does leave these kind of artifacts. You can just go in with the smudge tool by just clicking and holding this finger. Or if it looks like a dot, or if it looks like a water drop to you, the blur tool or the dodge tool, just click and hold that and then turn it into the smudge tool. But then you just kind of go in and you scrub it out a little bit, that's all. Erase these little edges up here actually too. I'm going to go ahead and decor fog, and I'm going to create a sort of dirt shadow by taking a darker, more orange tone and generating fog using that. I'm going to lower that layer underneath our dirt layer. I'm going to go to Filter, Map, Tile Seamless, making sure that I'm highlighting our dirt shadow layer to Tile Seamless that layer. And for that one, I'm done. I'm going to hit save. Same deal. You can save it here as dirt.xcf. I'm going to overwrite the one I have here, but just make sure to save it as dirt.xcf and hit save. Last, I'm going to go File, New, use the same dimensions, hit OK. This is going to be our cliff texture. I'm going to go ahead and change the color to like a darkish blue, like a bluish gray. Going to hit OK. Bucket Fill tool, click on the center, Filters, Decor, Fog. And I'm going to change the colors to white just for now. It's going to be overridden to white anyway, but it's just to help visualize the fog. I'm going to press OK. Oh, I'm going to change the layer name to Cliff. Turbulence is 1.0, opacity 100. Click OK. And then the only difference here is that what we're going to do is we're going to go to Filter, Distort, and Shift. And we're going to set this to be a vertical shift. Now remember, emboss kind of adds these like ridges and adds these high and low points to your texture. The idea here is that we're going to turn our fog into this vertical layer. And then when we emboss it, you'll see what happens. But it's going to create these vertical ridges onto our texture to mimic cliffs and edges that you see like in real life next to oceans and things like that. I'm going to shift it from 5 up to something drastic. 18 I think is fine with me. You can mess with the random seed if you want to kind of change the variability. I'm going to set the clipping to clip and I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go to Filters, Distort, Emboss. And as you can see here, this is already giving like a really rocky texture. We're going to set the azimuth to 130. And I'm just going to play with the elevation until it looks kind of just rocky, really. It's anything that looks rocky. That's the goal here for this cliff texture. I'm going to set the clipping to clip, hit OK, hold Shift S to grow it, hold Control, click the corner box, and then move it out a little bit just to get rid of the border that the emboss leaves behind. This part doesn't have to be perfect, by the way, just as long as you get rid of the square edges that the emboss leaves behind. Hit Enter. Right click the cliff texture, hit layer to image size, filters, map, tile seamless. And just like that, you do kind of have this really just like very rocky texture. Like you can kind of feel this one and it does feel very cliffy. I'm not going to do too much to this one anymore. I'm going to hit File, Save. I'm going to save it as Cliff. If you have nothing here and you hit save, it's just going to save into your folder, but I'm going to replace the one I have here from a previous tutorial. We're going to go back to Unity and we're going to set up some folders there to get ready for the terrain. Okay? Back in Unity, hopefully you have a brand new sample scene and a fresh assets folder. I'm going to right click here in the assets folder, going to go to create folder and make a folder called textures. And this is where we're going to export our textures. Back in GIMP, we're going to open up our cliff texture one more time. I'm going to go to File, Export, and I'm going to navigate to that folder in the assets in your project folder. So for me, it's assets, textures, and here I'm going to save it not as cliff.png, but as cliff.jpg. So by clicking the little plus sign down at the bottom left, you can open up the extensions types, and I'm just scrolling down until I find JPEG, and I'm going to hit export. Set the quality to 100. Unmark all these. They don't really do anything. I think they just take up memory. And that doesn't change the effect of the texture. So I'm going to hit export. And I'm going to repeat that process for all the other ones. I'm going to do the same for our cliff texture. I'm going to go to our dirt texture. I'm going to go to File, Export, navigate to our Assets folder, Textures folder, and use dirt.jpg as our file name. Once you hit export, you want to repeat the process for the actual values here. I'm going to set the quality to 100 and X out all these boxes. Hit export and do the same for the grass. With all those exported to Unity, and now you can see them here down in your assets folder, I'm going to control click and select all three. I'm going to leave everything alone. Make sure generate map is on, and then I'm going to set the max size to 64. Because we already know that this texture size is literally a 64 by 64 texture. With that done, we're going to hit the little plus button here in the hierarchy, and we're going to create our 3D object, terrain. And this is our Unity terrain right here. A few things before we import the textures. I'm going to go to terrain settings. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to set our height map resolution to be 33 by 33, which is the smallest you can go for Unity terrain. One other thing to note is our terrain width and terrain length. It's 1000 by 1000. Our pivot point for our terrain is the bottom left corner, but I want it centered in the world. So what I'm going to do is, because it's 1000 by 1000, I'm going to move 500 units to the left and 500 units back. Now we're going to head over to the paint terrain section. With paint texture selected here on the drop down, we're going to go to edit terrain, create layer, and we're going to double click our grass texture. Here, I'm going to click it I'm going to look at our new layer here in the project view. And I'm going to rename this to grass terrain layer. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the tiling size from 2 to 64 to 64, just so we kind of get that nice blurry effect. Now, if you middle click somewhere on the terrain, hold Alt and right click, you can zoom in and out by dragging your mouse. And if you hold Alt and drag with your left click, you can look around that pivot point. And so this is where you kind of get that low poly effect on your terrain. We're going to repeat that process for our other two textures. So I'm going to go to edit terrain, create layer, double click dirt. I'm going to head over to the project view. I'm going to double click the name of our new layer and name it dirt terrain layer. I'm going to increase its size to 32 by 32 because we actually do want our dirt to look a little bit more detailed. And then for our cliff texture, I'm going to go to create layer, double click the cliff texture, rename this to cliff terrain layer. And for the cliff terrain, we actually want it to look a little bit more blurry. So I'm going to increase it from 2 to 128 by 128. Now, before we can already start painting if you want. If you click on the dirt terrain layer, you can start drawing. And if you click on the cliff terrain layer, you can draw the cliff. But before we do anything else, I think now we can start drawing some hills. So still in the paint terrain section, I'm going to go ahead and select raise or lower terrain. I'm going to increase our brush size up to about just something kind of big. 130 is fine by me. I'm also going to change our render mode from shaded draw mode to shaded wireframe mode so we can actually see the polygons that we're going to be editing. So with all that selected, you can start clicking onto your terrain, and this is where we're going to raise our terrain layers. Just go ahead and make some hills. Just, this is where you can be a little bit more creative with what you're doing. The longer you hold it or the longer you draw over that section, the higher it goes. And this is just one facet of the terrain tools, but this is enough for us to kind of get working. If you're happy with the hills, now we can start drawing with our textures. I'm going to go head back to the paint texture layer. I'm going to highlight my grass layer and I'm going to erase the ones that I drew. And using the cliff, I'm just going to start drawing on anything that looks pretty steep. At this point, I mean, you are free to kind of just go off on your own. Like at this point, we are essentially done with the tutorial. Now I'm just kind of being a little creative. But for me, anything steep is where I'll draw with the cliff terrain texture. And the grass is just the base. So of course anything that's not drawn on will just be grass. Now for me, one other thing is if I'm going to be drawing trails with the dirt texture, I do like to lower the size of our brush, not the size of our terrain. Careful with this one. If you click on this little arrow, it'll get rid of the terrain settings for that texture, but we can still edit the brushes to paint actually onto the terrain. And so for trails, I'm going to go ahead and lower the brush size to something pretty small. I guess I'll just go 16. And this is how you get these smaller brushes. And it really doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, you know, you just have fun. Honestly, if you zoom out on a real world map of like dirt and mountains, it almost looks drawn on. So when you're down in like actual play range, nobody will know that you drew this onto a terrain. With that being done, I'm going to go ahead back to the default drawing mode, aka shaded draw mode. And just like that, it's got that, I don't want to say bad quality, but it does have that low quality that old video games used to have. But that's the base of it. If you want to keep watching, I'm going to do a little bit more changes to kind of give a little bit more oomph to our scene. And it's just going to be 1 or 2 settings to our camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Window, Rendering, Lighting, and in this little box here, I'm going to hit Environment, and I'm going to turn on Fog. Now make sure that you have fog enabled in your scene view by clicking on, there's this little, it looks like 2 little boxes with a little star next to it. Click the arrow next to it, the down arrow, and then enable fog. And you can see we have a very heavy fog. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the density to something very small, not too small, but pretty small. We'll go 0.002. That looks okay. I'm gonna change the fog to something kind of brighter too, like a nice white. I'm also going to go to our main camera, and in the environment section, I'm going to change the background type from Skybox to solid color. And I'm going to change the background color to like a nice white as well, or even like a sky blue. Now, it's not going to be reflected here in the scene view. When we go to the game view, though, this is where you do see the effects of our lighting changes. And another little cool tip is that if you click on this where it says free aspect, if you're in the default, it'll say free aspect. If you go down to this little plus sign, we can make our own custom resolutions, and I've already got some here, but if you want to mimic the old school retro stuff, you can name it something like Nintendo64-wide, and give it something like 428 by 240. This is as close as I can get to mimicking that resolution, but in a widescreen format. Or if you want to use like 4:3, like the really classic style, then you can do 320 by 240, which is the actual resolution a lot of Nintendo64s ran in. But me, I do like the wider resolution. It does cut off, like if you actually try to run this in a real window, it will cut off some of the edges, but to me it's fine, at least just for practice or for looking around. With the main camera highlighted, we can affect its transform, and we can raise its position, change its rotation, and just like that, you're kind of able to look around. At least now, if you don't have like a player camera or anything like that. But if you ask me, that looks pretty inviting in a way. I mean, it's got that vibe of like wanting to explore. It's got things you can't see in the background. I think this does a good job of emulating that old school style, and I hope you agree. I hope this tutorial was helpful. And if you have any questions, check the comments. I'll address anything. But if you want to look around at other tutorials, you definitely should. There's definitely better tutorials for terrain specifics, but this was a very much just very basics. If anything, the textures I think were probably more useful in general, but that's how you get it in the engine. Have fun, gamers.